Nobody could have predicted that a college football game would turn into one of the most jaw-dropping, emotionally charged spectacles of the season. The BYU Cougars versus Texas Tech Red Raiders matchup wasn't just about touchdowns and tackles. It was about pride, betrayal, and a shocking twist that left fans gasping in disbelief. From the moment the teams stepped onto the field, there was tension in the air. Something bigger than football was brewing. Cameras caught side-eyes, whispered confrontations, and one moment that ESPN commentators said changed everything. Rumors began swirling just before kickoff. Whispers that one of BYU's star players had leaked Texas Tech's playbook to a rival scout, and the truth might explode live on national TV. As the players took their positions, their eyes told a story of distrust and vengeance. Every pass, every tackle, every sideline stare carried emotional weight. Fans at home were glued to their screens, while the crowd inside the stadium could sense that something wasn't right. Then, midway through the first quarter, chaos erupted. A heated sideline confrontation caught on camera sent social media into a frenzy. By halftime, this wasn't a game anymore. It was a full-blown scandal that nobody saw coming. The moment the first whistle blew, it was clear this wasn't going to be an ordinary college football game. The crowd at Lavelle Edwards Stadium was roaring, the lights blazing, and both teams looked hungry for blood. But beneath that charged energy, there was something darker, an undercurrent of tension that had nothing to do with football strategy. Players were exchanging looks that felt too personal, too emotional. Something was brewing, and the fans could feel it. BYU quarterback Mason Reeves, usually calm and collected, looked visibly shaken. His jaw was tight, his eyes restless. Moments before kickoff, he had been seen arguing with wide receiver Luke Daniels near the locker room tunnel. No one knew what it was about, but insiders claimed it wasn't about the game. It was about betrayal. A source close to the team said Mason had found out that someone had leaked their entire offensive playbook to an outsider, and Luke was his prime suspect. As the first quarter began, Mason threw 2 incomplete passes, his timing off and his focus shattered. The commentators tried to play it off as early nerves, but it wasn't nerves. It was fury. Every time Luke came near, Mason's glare burned through him. On the sidelines, Coach Halpern could be seen gesturing furiously, trying to calm his quarterback down. But the tension was already visible to the cameras, and Twitter was on fire. Hashtags like Yo BYU Meltdown and Locker Room Drama started trending before halftime. Across the field, Texas Tech's quarterback, Jaden Cole, looked unusually confident. It was as if he knew exactly what BYU was about to do on every play. He threw a 60-yard touchdown pass that looked almost too easy, and that only fueled the suspicions. BYU fans in the stands started murmuring, how could Texas Tech read their plays so perfectly? It was almost as if someone had tipped them off. Midway through the second quarter, the breaking point came. After a failed third-down conversion, Mason stormed to the sideline, ripped off his helmet, and shouted directly at Luke. The microphones barely caught it, but viewers could make out enough words to cause chaos online. Mason yelled, "You sold us out, man! You actually sold us out!" Luke's shocked expression only made it worse. The cameras zoomed in, and for a moment the entire stadium fell silent. Luke tried to defend himself, saying something like, "It wasn't me, I swear," but Mason wasn't hearing it. He shoved Luke, and teammates had to step in to separate them. The coaches tried to de-escalate, but the damage was already done. The clip went viral within minutes. Commentators were stunned, fans were in disbelief, and Texas Tech players were smirking on the other side of the field. They could sense that BYU was crumbling from the inside out. Then came the twist that nobody expected. Just before halftime, an assistant coach from Texas Tech approached the refs and said there was an incident that needed attention. Moments later, security officials escorted a young man off the field, a man reportedly seen near the BYU locker room earlier that day. Rumors spread instantly that he was the same scout who had allegedly been leaked the playbook. But who gave it to him? That question hung in the air like a storm cloud. In the locker room, chaos reigned. The players were shouting, coaches were panicking, and Mason was pacing back and forth, demanding answers. "Someone in this room sold us out," he said, his voice trembling with anger. Luke sat on the bench, his head in his hands, muttering that he had nothing to do with it. A few teammates believed him, but others weren't so sure. Tight end Josh Parker confronted him directly, saying, "Bro, you've been acting off all week. If you didn't do it, then prove it." The halftime show couldn't distract anyone from the unfolding scandal. ESPN analysts were already calling it the most dramatic first half in college football history. Fans on social media were taking sides, some defending Mason for calling out the betrayal, others accusing him of losing his cool and damaging team morale. Even alumni were chiming in, disappointed that BYU's reputation for unity and discipline was crumbling in front of millions. As halftime ended, cameras captured Mason sitting alone, staring at his playbook with a look of frustration and heartbreak. The tension between him and Luke was so thick, even their teammates kept their distance. One assistant coach was overheard saying, "This isn't about football anymore. This is personal." And he was right. The second half began under a cloud of unease. Mason's first throw was intercepted, leading to another Texas Tech touchdown. Boos echoed from the stands, and Mason's frustration was boiling over. Luke tried to encourage him, yelling from the sideline, "We got this, man. Just focus." But Mason ignored him. Then, out of nowhere, the Texas Tech defense started shouting taunts. One of them yelled, "Thanks for the playbook, Luke." The entire stadium gasped. How did they know his name? That single moment flipped everything upside down. Mason turned toward Luke again, his face a mix of anger and betrayal. "You told them your name was on it?" he shouted. Luke looked terrified. "No, they're lying. They're trying to mess with you." But the trust was gone. Coach Halpern called a timeout, trying to regain control, but it was too late. The team was falling apart emotionally. Texas Tech took advantage of every mistake, every hesitation. On the sidelines, players argued, coaches yelled, and cameras caught every moment. The broadcasters described it as a live implosion of one of the most disciplined teams in the NCAA. Then, something strange happened. As Texas Tech scored another field goal, a mysterious text notification popped up on Luke's phone, which was confiscated by team staff minutes later. Insiders claimed the text was from a Texas number reading, "Thanks for making it easy tonight." When the coaches saw it, the entire atmosphere shifted. No one knew if it was real or a setup, but it sent chills through the room. Back on the field, Mason's frustration reached a breaking point. During a huddle, he slammed his helmet down and shouted, "We're done if we don't know who to trust." The offensive line stood in silence, their morale completely shattered. The rest of the quarter was a blur of missed passes, dropped catches, and frustration. Fans in the stands started chanting, "We want answers," their voices echoing through the night air. Even Texas Tech's fans looked stunned by how the game had spiraled into something far beyond sports. The drama had taken over completely, and everyone watching knew that whatever was happening on that field was only the beginning of something much bigger. By the time the third quarter began, the air felt electric, not with excitement but with suspicion. Mason refused to even look in Luke's direction. Texas Tech players were exchanging smirks, and in the stands, a few fans claimed to see Texas Tech's head coach whispering something to one of the referees, adding another layer of conspiracy to the chaos. That's where things took an even darker turn. As the quarter wound down, a heated altercation broke out near the BYU bench, one that would change the course of the entire night. The fight started so fast that even the cameras barely caught it at first. Mason had just thrown another incomplete pass, and the tension on the sideline was unbearable. Luke was pacing back and forth, trying to get Mason's attention, shouting that they needed to stick together if they wanted any chance at a comeback. But Mason was done listening. The pain in his eyes wasn't just about losing. It was about feeling betrayed by someone he trusted like a brother. As the crowd noise swelled, Mason suddenly turned and yelled, "You ruined everything, Luke! We worked for this all season and you threw it away!" Luke snapped back, his voice cracking. "I didn't do anything, Mason. You keep blaming me because you can't handle losing." The two got in each other's faces, shouting so loud that even the commentators fell silent, waiting to see what would happen next. Teammates rushed in to separate them, but Mason shoved Luke so hard that he stumbled into the equipment rack, knocking over water bottles and helmets. Security guards and coaches stepped in as the stadium lights flickered and the audience gasped. The referees stopped the game briefly as the brawl became the top trending topic online. Fans were recording, yelling, and some even started chanting, "Fight, fight!" as if they were watching a street showdown instead of a college football game. Coach Halpern grabbed Mason by the shoulders and shouted, "You're gonna destroy this team if you don't calm down." But Mason's eyes were filled with tears. "How can I calm down when I don't know who to trust?" he said, his voice trembling. Luke stood frozen, looking devastated. "I didn't leak anything, Coach. Someone's setting me up," he insisted, but no one seemed to believe him. Not after that mysterious text message. On the other side, Texas Tech players were whispering and laughing, clearly enjoying the chaos. Jaden Cole, their quarterback, smirked as he passed Mason on the field. "You should thank us," he said under his breath. "You're finally seeing who your friends really are." Mason's head snapped toward him, fury flashing across his face. "What did you just say?" he barked, but Jaden just jogged away with a smug grin. Back in the stands, rumors were flying. Some fans claimed that Texas Tech had been working with a disgruntled former BYU staff member who still held grudges against the team. Others believed Luke had been tricked into sharing plays by someone pretending to be a recruiter. No one knew what to believe anymore, and that uncertainty was tearing everyone apart. Then, during the next drive, something incredible happened. Luke made a stunning catch, a deep 40-yard throw that reignited the crowd's hope for a brief moment. For the first time all night, the fans were cheering again. Mason, despite his anger, couldn't deny the connection they had on the field. He looked at Luke and gave a small nod, almost like an olive branch. But before they could build on that momentum, Texas Tech's defense pulled a dirty move, one that changed everything. As Luke went for another catch, a Texas Tech safety tackled him brutally late, slamming him to the ground after the whistle. The hit looked intentional, and the entire stadium erupted in outrage. Luke lay on the turf, clutching his shoulder as teammates rushed to his side. Mason dropped to his knees next to him, shouting for medical staff. "Stay with me, man. You're good. Stay with me," he said, his voice breaking. The referees threw a flag for unnecessary roughness, but the damage was done. Luke was helped off the field, wincing in pain, while Texas Tech fans cheered mockingly. Mason's fury boiled over again. He charged toward the Texas Tech sideline, shouting, "That was cheap. You knew what you were doing." Coaches and referees had to hold him back before the situation escalated into another fight. As Luke was escorted into the locker room, cameras followed, capturing every painful step. Inside, he broke down in tears, whispering, "I didn't betray anyone. Why does everyone think I did?" Trainers worked on his shoulder, but it wasn't just the injury that hurt. It was the heartbreak of being blamed for something he swore he didn't do. Meanwhile, Mason returned to the field with fire in his eyes. Whatever anger he had toward Luke, it was now redirected at Texas Tech. He started playing like a man possessed, throwing lasers down the field, dodging tackles, and shouting encouragement to his teammates. The crowd felt the shift immediately. The boos turned into cheers, and for a brief moment, it looked like BYU might actually turn things around. Then came the unexpected twist. During a timeout, an ESPN sideline reporter received breaking information live on air. A source had confirmed that an anonymous email had been sent to Texas Tech's coaching staff earlier that week containing BYU's playbook, and it didn't come from Luke's account. It came from an internal staff login belonging to the team's video analyst, Ethan Ward. When that news broke, the entire stadium went silent. Mason looked stunned. Coach Halpern grabbed his headset, yelling for confirmation. Ethan, who had been standing quietly behind the bench all game, suddenly looked pale. When security approached him, he tried to explain, but it was too late. The crowd had already turned on him. He was escorted out of the stadium as fans booed, chanting, "Traitor! Traitor!" Inside the broadcast booth, commentators couldn't believe it. "So it wasn't a player. It was someone from their own staff," one said. This changes everything." Mason stood motionless on the sideline, realizing he had blamed the wrong person. His face twisted with guilt. He whispered, "What did I do?" When halftime footage replayed of him yelling at Luke, the crowd's reaction shifted. Boos turned to murmurs of sympathy for Luke, who was now in the locker room nursing his shoulder and his broken trust. The camera caught Mason glancing toward the tunnel, looking like he wanted to disappear. His teammates avoided eye contact, unsure what to say. Then the Jumbotron flashed a shocking replay. Ethan Ward being escorted out, his face hidden under a cap, while Texas Tech fans taunted him. One fan threw a drink, shouting, "Thanks for the free win." It was pandemonium. Commentators called it the most chaotic college football scene in years. Coach Halpern tried to pull the team together, shouting, "We still got a game to finish. Let's do this for ourselves, for each other." But the emotional toll was heavy. Mason's hands were shaking as he prepared for the next play. Still, he knew he had to make it right somehow. As the quarter came to an end, BYU was down by 14 points. Mason took a deep breath and looked at the scoreboard. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "I owe him everything." And with that, he tightened his helmet and stepped back onto the field, determined to turn things around, not just for the win, but to make amends for the mistake that had shattered his friendship and his team. The final quarter was about to begin, but the real battle wasn't between BYU and Texas Tech anymore. It was between guilt and redemption, trust and betrayal, and the question of whether Mason could undo the damage before it was too late. The fourth quarter began under the brightest lights and the heaviest tension the stadium had ever felt. The entire crowd was buzzing, whispering, waiting to see what would happen next. The scoreboard read Texas Tech 31, BYU 17, but nobody was looking at the numbers anymore. All eyes were on Mason Reeves, who stood on the sideline staring toward the locker room tunnel where Luke had disappeared. The guilt was eating him alive. He had accused his own teammate on national television, humiliated him in front of millions, and now he knew he was wrong. As the offense prepared to take the field, Coach Halpern pulled Mason aside. "Listen, kid," he said, his tone softer than usual. "You messed up, yeah, but you've got two choices. You either let this break you, or you fight to make it right. Which is it gonna be?" Mason nodded, taking a shaky breath. "I fight," he said quietly. "I have to." When the offense huddled, Mason looked around at his teammates. Their faces were tired, frustrated, drained. "I know I let you guys down," he admitted. "I lost it out there, but that's done. No more finger-pointing, no more blame. We play our game. For each other, for Luke, and for every fan that still believes in us. Deal?" The players exchanged glances, then one by one, they nodded. Tight end Josh Parker clapped Mason on the shoulder and said, "Then let's make it count." The next play was electric. Mason dropped back and launched a perfect pass downfield to Josh, who caught it in stride and sprinted 50 yards for a touchdown. The crowd exploded, chanting Mason's name. The energy shifted, and for the first time all night, it felt like BYU was alive again. Even Texas Tech's sideline looked shaken. Their coach yelled for them to focus, but the Red Raiders were starting to look nervous. Back in the locker room, Luke watched the play on a small TV monitor as trainers wrapped his shoulder. His eyes welled up. "He's doing it," he said softly. One of the trainers replied, "He's doing it for you, man." Luke smiled faintly but said nothing. He just kept watching, his hand pressed to his chest as the game raged on. On the field, Mason was in full redemption mode. He ran the ball himself when needed, took hits without flinching, and shouted encouragement after every play. The commentators were stunned. "This kid is running on pure emotion," one said. "You can feel it. This isn't just football anymore. This isn't just football anymore." Then, midway through the quarter, Texas Tech answered back with a deep touchdown pass of their own. The crowd groaned as the lead stretched again. Mason slammed his helmet in frustration, but Coach Halpern yelled from the sidelines, "Keep your head up! This isn't over!" That's when the biggest twist of the night unfolded. As Texas Tech's defense lined up, one of their players, linebacker Cameron Wells, suddenly started arguing with his own teammates. The microphones caught fragments of their exchange. "You said it was just a prank." "Nah, man, you went too far." Confusion rippled through the stadium. Commentators fell silent as cameras zoomed in on the argument. Then Cameron ripped off his helmet, threw it on the ground, and stormed off the field. Moments later, a sideline reporter broke the shocking update. Cameron had admitted to a coach that Texas Tech's staff had indeed received the leaked playbook. But instead of reporting it, they used it to gain an advantage. The revelation spread like wildfire. Fans started booing the Red Raiders, chanting "cheaters." The Texas Tech coach looked furious, trying to calm his team as referees held an urgent discussion at midfield. Mason stood frozen. "So it wasn't just Ethan," he whispered. "They actually used it." Coach Halpern shook his head in disbelief. Unbelievable. All that chaos, all that pain, and for what? Then, almost symbolically, the Jumbotron replayed Mason's earlier sideline outburst against Luke, followed by the footage of Texas Tech's players storming off. The contrast was striking. One man wrongfully accused, another confessing the truth. The crowd began chanting Luke's name. "Luke, Luke, Luke!" It echoed across the entire stadium. Down in the tunnel, Luke heard it. He slowly stood up, ignoring the trainer's protests, and began walking back toward the field. His shoulder was wrapped, his face determined. As he stepped out into the bright lights, the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Mason turned and saw him. For a split second, time froze. Their eyes met across the field, both filled with regret and understanding. Coach Halpern motioned to Luke. "You sure you can go?" Luke nodded. "I'm not missing this." The team roared in approval. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The brothers in arms, finally reunited. The next drive was pure cinematic perfection. Mason and Luke played like they had nothing left to lose. Every pass was sharper, every route tighter, every moment fueled by something bigger than the game itself. The commentators called it the comeback of the year. Fans were crying, screaming, living every second as if their hearts were on the field. Then, with just under 2 minutes left, BYU was down by only 6 points. They were on the Texas Tech 30-yard line. The stadium was shaking from the noise. Mason looked at Luke and said quietly, "This one's for redemption." Luke grinned. "Let's make history." Mason dropped back, scanning the field as Texas Tech's defenders closed in. The clock was ticking, 5 seconds, 4, 3. He launched the ball high into the end zone, where Luke leapt between two defenders and caught it mid-air, before crashing hard into the ground. The crowd held its breath. For a terrifying moment, there was silence. Then Luke raised the ball in the air. Touchdown. The stadium exploded. Fans jumped, screamed, cried. The scoreboard tied at 38-38. Mason fell to his knees in disbelief, overwhelmed with emotion. Teammates surrounded Luke, lifting him off the ground as the noise reached deafening levels. Coach Halpern hugged Mason and yelled, "You did it, kid! You made it right!" But just when it seemed like the night would end on a triumphant note, Texas Tech wasn't done yet. With less than a minute left, Jaden Cole and his offense came charging back onto the field. They were angry, desperate, and determined to silence the noise. Their first play was a short pass, then another quick gain. The clock was down to 20 seconds when Jaden launched a deep throw down the sideline, straight into the arms of his receiver. But as the receiver sprinted toward the end zone out of nowhere, Luke, injured shoulder and all, appeared like lightning, tackled him just short of the goal line, saving the touchdown. The crowd went absolutely wild. The whistle blew, the clock hit 0, and the game went into overtime. Mason ran over and helped Luke to his feet. "You okay?" he asked breathlessly. Luke nodded, wincing but smiling. "Never better." The camera zoomed in on their faces, sweaty, exhausted, but united again. In that moment, it didn't matter who won or lost. It was about forgiveness, brotherhood, and fighting through the chaos that had nearly destroyed them. But the night wasn't over yet. As the teams prepared for overtime, a storm started rolling in. Dark clouds, rumbling thunder. It was as if the universe itself wasn't ready to let this drama end quietly. And everyone watching knew something even bigger was still coming. Overtime began under a stormy sky, the rain beginning to drizzle down onto the field. soaking the players and adding another layer of tension. The crowd's roar was relentless, echoing through the stadium as if demanding justice, redemption, and closure all at once. Mason Reeves adjusted his helmet, water dripping down his face, and glanced toward Luke Daniels, who nodded back, his determination unshaken despite his injured shoulder. It was clear to everyone watching, this was more than a game now. It was personal, emotional, and unforgettable. The first possession of overtime saw BYU taking the ball. Mason dropped back, scanning the defense as Texas Tech's linebackers circled like predators. He called out the signals with a steady voice, the weight of the entire night pressing down on him. Every step, every glance, every heartbeat mattered. He snapped the ball, faked a handoff, and ran himself, dodging two defenders with agility that seemed fueled by pure emotion. The crowd leapt to their feet, screaming as Mason slid just past the marker for a first down. His teammates clapped, shouting encouragement, and even the commentators were at a loss for words. "I've never seen anything like this," one whispered. Then came Luke's moment. With Mason rolling out to the left, Luke broke free, darting across the field like a shadow. Mason launched a perfect spiraling pass, and Luke leapt into the air, snatching it with one hand before crashing hard into the end zone. Touchdown BYU! The stadium erupted in chaos, fans screaming, crying, jumping. Mason ran over, lifting Luke off the ground, tears mixing with the rain. "I'm so sorry," Mason shouted. "I should never have doubted you." Luke, gasping for breath but smiling through the pain, whispered back, "We're good. We're together." Texas Tech, stunned by the sudden turnaround, scrambled to regroup. Jaden Cole's confidence had vanished, replaced by frustration and disbelief. The Red Raiders coach shouted instructions, but the rain and the intensity of BYU's emotional momentum seemed to paralyze them. Mason and Luke had become an unstoppable force, a duo fueled by betrayal, redemption, and now sheer determination. The next possession was chaotic. Texas Tech tried multiple trick plays, desperate to regain control. One pass was tipped at the line. Another receiver slipped in the mud and dropped the ball. Mason barked orders from the sideline, guiding his team like a general leading his soldiers. Every play, every decision was calculated, and yet it felt instinctive, almost as if the night's turmoil had sharpened their senses. As the clock wound down in the first overtime, Texas Tech managed a last-second field goal to tie the score again. The stadium was on edge, anticipating the final possession, the climactic showdown. Mason looked toward Luke, both of them drenched, exhausted, but unbroken. "This is it," Mason said. "One drive. We end it here." Luke nodded, gripping his shoulder, and whispered, "Let's finish what we started." The final drive began with a silent intensity that could be felt by everyone in the stands. The rain intensified, dripping down faces, turning the field into a slick, slippery battlefield. Mason called audibles, adjusting on the fly, and the team responded like a single unit. Every pass was sharp, every block precise, every step forward calculated. The audience was completely silent for long stretches, hanging on each moment as if holding their breath. With just under a minute left, Mason handed off to running back Troy Williams, who plowed through two defenders for a critical gain. The crowd exploded again, but Mason knew the real moment was yet to come. He lined up for the final play, the weight of the night's drama heavy on his shoulders. He glanced at Luke one last time. "Ready?" he asked. Luke's eyes, filled with rain, mud, and determination, met his. "Always," he said. Mason snapped the ball, faked a handoff, and sprinted toward the right sideline. Luke broke free down the middle, and Mason launched a spiraling pass that cut through the stormy sky like a comet. Time seemed to slow as Luke leapt into the air, catching it perfectly. He tumbled into the end zone, arms raised, while the crowd erupted into pandemonium. Touchdown. Game over. BYU wins. The celebration was instantaneous and chaotic. Teammates surrounded Mason and Luke, lifting them, shouting, and embracing through the rain. Coach Halpern ran onto the field, drenched and grinning, hugging both players tightly. Fans poured onto the stands, screaming their excitement and relief. Social media exploded. Clips of the final touchdown were shared millions of times within minutes, and hashtags like BYU and the Mason and Luke trended worldwide. Back in the locker room, the emotional fallout continued. Mason apologized repeatedly to Luke, who finally laughed through his tears. "You owe me a pizza," Luke said, breaking the tension and causing the room to erupt in laughter. The teammates joined in, finally feeling the relief of victory and the restoration of trust. Even Ethan Ward's earlier betrayal seemed like a distant nightmare, now overshadowed by the unity and resilience of the team. The press conference afterward was equally dramatic. Reporters asked about the night's controversies, the leaked playbook, and the emotional roller coaster. Mason admitted, "I made mistakes. I judged too quickly. But we came together, and that's what mattered." Luke added, "It was hard, but we learned who we are and who we can trust. That's bigger than any game." The room filled with applause, tears, and flashes from cameras capturing the historic moment. Even Texas Tech's players and coaches were affected. Some admitted in interviews later that night that they had underestimated BYU, that the drama had made them complacent, and that they had been shaken by Mason and Luke's resilience. The story of the night wasn't just the win, it was the emotional redemption, the forgiveness, and the triumph over chaos. As the fans slowly left the stadium, the rain still falling, many were talking about the incredible emotional journey they had witnessed. It wasn't just a football game. It was a story of trust broken and rebuilt, of betrayal and redemption, of a friendship tested to its limits and proven unbreakable. The night would be remembered for years, replayed endlessly on sports networks, discussed on podcasts, and shared endlessly online. Mason and Luke stood together one last time on the field, drenched, muddy, exhausted, but smiling. The lights reflected off the wet turf, and in that moment, the storm outside mirrored the storm they had endured. Chaotic, intense, and ultimately cleansing. The fans had witnessed something extraordinary, something beyond sport, something that reminded them why they loved these games, these players, and the raw, unpredictable drama that comes with being human. As the stadium emptied and the cameras turned off, one thing was clear. The story of BYU versus Texas Tech that night would live on forever, not just for the plays and the scores, but for the emotions, the betrayals, the redemption, and the unforgettable bond between Mason Reeves and Luke Daniels. The storm had passed, but the memory of the night's chaos, intensity, and triumph would never fade. Can you believe everything that went down tonight? The drama, the betrayal, the redemption. It was more than just a football game. It was a roller coaster of emotions that left every fan on the edge of their seat. Mason and Luke proved that even when trust is broken, true friendship and teamwork can turn everything around. But the big question still remains, will BYU be able to keep this momentum going, and how will Texas Tech respond to this epic showdown? If you were shocked by the chaos on the field, the unexpected twists, or the emotional comeback, don't keep it to yourself. Smash that like button. Subscribe to our channel for all the latest and juiciest college football drama, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us who you think handled the pressure best, who was truly betrayed, and what might happen next between these two teams. We want to hear your opinions because the story doesn't end here. It's just getting started. Stay tuned because with college football, you never know what's coming next.